The night I learned that I was Jasper's substitute for his first love. I cried under the covers for a long time. The next morning when I got up, I wiped away my tears and told myself in the mirror that although Jasper's affection was fake and his love was illusory, the money and power were real. It was like I had burned some really effective incense in my past life that he chose me as his substitute. I served as Jasper's substitute for his first love for 3 years, working conscientiously without a single day off throughout the year. Later, his real first love came back, and people around me all laughed at me. The counterfeit, suggesting that I should be sensible and take the initiative to step aside. I carefully guessed Jasper's thoughts, and thought that I should indeed be proactive, and proposed to leave. 3 months after I left Jasper, he called me and asked where his favorite tie was. I don't know. Why don't you buy another one? Jasper was silent for 2 seconds, and then asked me when I would go back. I was a bit in a dilemma, you know. In our line of work, we rely on our youth. I'm getting older these 2 years. And I don't look much like Miss First Love anymore. Jasper didn't say anything. So I kindly reminded him again. How about you ask Miss First Love? Maybe she has other substitute candidates? I think Jasper and I parted on good terms. After all, on the day I left, I packed my luggage right in front of him. He sat on the sofa smoking, watching me bustling about, going from the bedroom to the kitchen, from the tassel table lamp that I spent a large sum of money on to the pair of cat head chopsticks that were exclusively mine. I packed everything. I made every effort to leave no trace of my existence in this home. After all, I needed to make room for the first love. Although Miss First Love had always known about my existence, I should be sensible and clean up my things. Then I'll be leaving now, pushing to huge suitcases. I stood at the entrance and smiled as I bid farewell to Jasper. He extinguished his cigarette and was about to stand up. Let me see you off. No need. I've already called a car. And the driver is already downstairs. I quickly waved my hand and refused his offer of help. Thank you for your help these past few years. I've been very happy. When I reached downstairs, the private car driver got out to help me with my luggage. At first, he almost couldn't lift the suitcase. He smiled and joked, "Miss, did you put stones in here? It's so heavy." "Stones aren't this heavy. What's in here is my self-esteem." I gritted my teeth, lifted the suitcase with all my might, and finally threw it into the trunk. Then, let out a low sigh. In the driver's stunned gaze, I opened the car door and got in with a swagger. When I left, Jasper didn't try to hold me back. And I didn't look back either. We didn't delete any of each other's contact information. Last week, he posted something on Moments. And I even gave him a thumbs up. I think we're all adults. Just like the lyrics of that song say, we should part with dignity. However, probably in Jasper's eyes, we were never really in a relationship, so naturally, it couldn't be considered a breakup either. After that phone call, Jasper never contacted me again. Maybe, prompted by my reminder, he realized that although the genuine article was irreplaceable, there were indeed many choices for the counterfeit. After my life's focus was no longer centered around Jasper, I suddenly had a lot more time. So I gradually took the certificates that I hadn't had the chance to obtain in the previous 2 years. When I came back to my senses from my busy life, it was winter in the blink of an eye. I opened the calendar and found that today was actually Jasper's birthday. I thought about it and clicked into Jasper's Moments. All I saw was a blank page. I blinked, vaguely remembering that Jasper's Moments was open to everyone. He didn't mind others prying into his privacy at all and had always been open and straightforward. So, the only possibility for this situation was that he had blocked me. I thought about it and chose to delete him as a friend. Since he minded my existence, I might as well disappear more completely. The chicken soup in the kitchen was gurgling. Just as I was about to put down my phone to turn off the heat, the phone screen lit up. A friend called me, crying and sniffling, saying that she had broken up with her boyfriend and wanted me to go and accompany her to drink right away. I turned off the heat while soothing her emotions, and picked up my keys and coat and rushed out the door. I have a good tolerance for alcohol, which I developed during my 3 years as a substitute. After all, I was a substitute. Not the real thing. When there were drinking parties and banquets that required socializing, I would always take the initiative to stand up and help Jasper block the wine. Although I would occasionally complain that Jasper had no chivalrous spirit towards women. Even though I was a substitute, I was still a woman after all. It was really excessive that he, a grown man, took it for granted that I should block the wine for him. But since he was generous, I endured it. When I arrived at the KTV private room, I immediately saw the scattered empty wine bottles. My friend was holding a microphone and howling, "It's so hard being a woman. It's so hard being a person. I'm still worried at this age." When she saw me, she threw the microphone aside, and her whole body pressed towards me like a huge mountain. I let out a muffled groan, took a step back, and caught her drunken body. I had such a heart-connecting moment 3 years ago. After all, I had truly fallen for Jasper at that time. At first, how could I have known that he was treating me as a substitute? I was so stupid that I thought I had found true love. "Are you feeling very sad?" I pushed aside her bangs and asked her softly. My friend burped. Her face was all red, and I couldn't tell if it was from drinking too much or crying too much. "I'm so sad. Ivy. I'm so sad. My heart is hurting so much. Please dig it out for me." "It won't hurt if you dig it out." I thought about it, pressed the service bell, stated my request, and then laboriously helped my friend lie down on the sofa. After a while, the door of the private room was pushed open again. Male models with different styles lined up in a row and introduced themselves one by one. I threw my bank card on the table, slapped my chest boldly, and said, "Pick whichever one you like." "It's on me." Burp. "Then can I have all of them? I've been renovating my house recently, and my finances are still a bit tight. But there's no way around it. After all, she's my friend." I waved my hand grandly, and was about to pay for all of them when a familiar figure suddenly flashed outside the opened door of the private room. Before I could react, that person stuck his head in, looking shocked. "Holy shit. Ivy. How much money did you get from Jasper? You ordered so many male models at once? No way. I have to get Jasper to come and take a look." I was completely confused. How long had it been since I separated from Jasper? Theoretically, Jasper should be holding hands with his first love and walking into the marriage hall by now. Why was he still meddling so much? He even wanted to interfere with his former substitute ordering male models? The several male models looked at each other. Probably because they had seen this kind of scene a lot. They tentatively asked me, "Then should we stay?" I thought about it, and nodded. "Stay. Sing, heavy so wide sesh. Dance. And do some borderline performances. Show all your talents. If you make my friend happy, I'll give you a tip. Life is short. Seize the day and enjoy yourself." I have to say, these male models are all professionals. They made my friend beam with joy. Someone brought a glass of wine and sat down next to me, being flirtatious and asking me to drink a cup of wine with him intertwined. I smiled and shook my head, holding the wine glass against his lips. He gave me a teasing look, opened his mouth, and drank it all in one gulp with my hand supporting the glass. He even picked a good angle deliberately, making the excess wine flow down his neck and disappear into his collarbone. TSK. He really knows how to have fun. I grabbed a tissue and wanted to wipe him. When I looked up accidentally, I saw that at the door of the private room, with Jasper at the front, there was a whole bunch of people standing there staring at us. If I wasn't sure that Jasper and I were now completely clean and innocent, I would almost have thought that Jasper had come with his family members to catch me in the act. Jasper's friends took the initiative to suggest that since we met, it was fate, so we might as well play together. I didn't understand what was so fun about it. After all, in the past few years when I was the substitute for Miss First Love, I had never been looked at directly by Jasper's friends. However, upon second thought, although their personalities weren't that great, they all had one thing in common: they were all very generous. At least they wouldn't make me pay tonight. I hesitated for 2 seconds and even thought about ordering 2 more top models to really comfort my friend's wounded heart, but when I turned around, I saw that my friend was already feeling up and down the six-pack ABS of the male models on her left and right. and she looked quite satisfied. Well, as long as she's happy. Jasper didn't sit next to me. He occupied a sofa booth by himself and was now frowning as he swirled the wine glass in his hand. I used to think he looked really handsome and charming like this. Later, I thought he was being pretentious. Someone sat down next to me and asked me in a self-righteous tone, "Hey, it's Jasper's birthday today. Aren't you going to show something?" I instinctively looked up at Jasper. He didn't seem to notice the commotion here. He was playing with a lighter now and then, with his eyes lowered. And I didn't know what he was thinking. I knew very well that these people didn't like me, and just wanted to pick a fight with me. This kind of thing happened quite often in the past few years. And Jasper would never stand up for me. For the sake of money. I sometimes gritted my teeth and endured it. But now I couldn't do that anymore. As people get older, they become more stubborn. The waist that I could bend before, I can't bend it now. So I just gave him a polite smile and turned a deaf ear to his words. I accompanied Jasper to celebrate his birthday for 3 years. Every year, I had to rack my brains to think of surprises. This year, I finally had an easy time. And only a fool would ask for trouble. Seeing that it was almost time, I finally took the initiative to stand up and walked in front of Jasper. He was looking down at his phone and didn't look at me. The private room was very noisy. So I had to bend down and get close to his ear. "My friend is asleep, so I'm going to send her back now. Happy birthday to you." Jasper finally looked up. This was the first time he had looked at me since he entered the private room. The first words he said were, "Are you leaving just like that? Otherwise, you don't really expect me to show something, do you?" I pretended to be shocked. "What if I really want you to?" Jasper's expression didn't seem like he was joking. I gradually put away the smile on my face and became serious. "Then you can keep wanting it. Anyway, I won't give it to you." I helped my friend, who was already dead drunk on the sofa, and slowly walked out of the private room. Someone blocked my way. I ignored him and turned back to look at Jasper. He sat in the corner where light and shadow intermingled, looking at me. But he was speaking to the person blocking my way. "Let her go." I showed a fake smile. "Thank you, young Master John, for your kindness." Since I drove, I didn't drink a single drop of alcohol throughout the whole process. I personally handed my friend over to her parents before I felt relieved to leave. Her parents kept thanking me and wanted to keep me for the night, saying that it wasn't safe for a girl like me to go home alone so late. "It's okay. My home isn't far from here. It's only a 10-minute drive. And I'll be there soon. Uncle and Aunt don't see me off. Go back home quickly." One of them stayed to take care of my friend. And the other personally saw me to my car and watched me drive out of the community before turning around and going upstairs. On the way home, I took a detour and drove to the riverside. In the past, when I was by Jasper's side, I was under a lot of pressure. So I often drove here in the middle of the night to catch the wind. Being a substitute isn't easy either. Jasper is hard to please. And there aren't too many similarities between me and the first love lady. In order to cater to Jasper's preferences, I would deliberately wear makeup imitating the first love lady. Sometimes, when I accidentally glance at myself in the rearview mirror, I would wonder who this woman is and why she seems so unfamiliar. So even if the first love lady hadn't come back, I was almost ready to take the initiative to propose leaving. So this timing is really perfect. The first love lady happened to come back, and I just happened to have earned enough money. My love for Jasper has finally been completely exhausted. I touch my chest. In that position, my heart is beating regularly and powerfully. I reunited with Jasper and said a few words. The atmosphere was fairly peaceful. It doesn't hurt anymore. Unlike most substitute stories, this substitute, was personally chosen by the first love lady. This truth was also told to me by the first love lady herself. Jasper and I were university classmates. But we met in a bar. At that time, in order to earn my living expenses, I was introduced by a classmate to work part-time in a bar. That bar was of quite a high class. But in such a place, it's inevitable that there are all kinds of people. When I was being made things difficult by a customer, Jasper happened to show up and helped me out of the predicament. Afterwards, I thanked him, and he just nodded casually without taking it to heart. Instead, he asked me, "Are we from the same school? I seem to have seen you on campus before." I was quite surprised at that time because Jasper and I were not in the same major. It was just because of the curriculum that we would occasionally meet in the same classroom. He shouldn't have noticed me. But I still nodded with a smile and said, "Yes. We have met before." He let out an and turned around to leave. I watched him enter the private room with my own eyes. I knew that private room. The minimum consumption there was 200 yuan. Alas, there are so many rich people in the world. Would the world be destroyed if I became one of them? At that time, I didn't take that encounter to heart. It was not until later when I met Jasper again on campus that he took the initiative to greet me. I heard that Jasper is a cold person. When girls ask for his contact information, he never even gives them a glance. So he actually has a personality that would take the initiative to greet his classmates? Jasper and I maintained this kind of casual acquaintance relationship as classmates until the eve of the spring festival that year, when I ran into Jasper, who was back on campus to pick up some materials. Originally, I just waved at him from a distance and planned to go to the playground for a run. Unexpectedly, having fulfilled my session, Jasper actually took the initiative to come over and asked, "Aren't you going home during the vacation?" No. I applied to the school to stay on campus. This was not the first year I had stayed on campus for the spring festival. During the spring festival, the prices of various part-time jobs doubled, which was a great opportunity to make money. "Then how do you plan to spend the spring festival?" "Working. Of course," I answered matter-of-factly. "Are you working even on New Year's Eve?" "Yeah. I'm also working. But I'll get off work earlier that day. Fortunately, having fulfilled it's earlier. So I can catch the last subway back to school." Jasper didn't say anything at that time. It was not until New Year's Eve. Since I wasn't in a hurry to go home for the spring festival, I was the last one to tidy up, closed the door of the bar, and then turned around. Jasper was leaning against a sports car, wearing a thin black long coat. He raised his hand and curled the corners of his mouth at me. At that moment, all I could think was, wow, if I'm not moved by this, I'm afraid I'm not a human but a heartless robot. "What are you doing?" I looked at him hesitantly. "Taking you to celebrate the spring festival." You, taking me to celebrate the spring festival?" I pointed at my nose and asked, "Aren't you a local? Aren't you going to celebrate the spring festival with your family?" "No need." He opened the card war and asked me, "Are you coming or not?" I hesitated for a few seconds. Actually, I think I shouldn't have hesitated. It's just that people always have a cert and defense mechanism. Maybe at that time, my subconscious mind felt that this wasn't right. It seemed that Jasper and I were not in a relationship where we could spend New Year's Eve alone together. However, people should be crazy once in a while. So I got into his sports car. I have to say, the chassis is really low, and it's not as comfortable as I imagined. It was really awkward during the whole journey. Jasper and I were not familiar with each other, and we didn't even have any topics to talk about. But Jasper was very at ease throughout the whole process. He took me to a high-rise restaurant famous for its night view for a meal, and he reserved the whole place. I had a vague premonition in my heart. Sure enough, halfway through the meal, Jasper asked me if I would consider being with him. I put down the knife and fork that I wasn't proficient in using and asked him, "Do you like me?" Instead of answering, he asked me, "Don't you think I like you?" "Yes, having fulfilled my obsession. I do." I simply nodded and said, "And I heard that you have a girlfriend. Right?" After all, Jasper is a prominent figure on campus. His every move attracts attention. And his private life is also a topic of discussion. I heard that he has a childhood sweetheart girlfriend who is studying abroad, and the two of them have a deep relationship. I'm single now. So, this was the first time I heard Jasper call my name so seriously. "Ivy, would you like to be my girlfriend?" I agreed to Jasper's pursuit. But actually, for a long time, I kept wondering why it was me. I never thought I would feel inferior because of my background before. But maybe Jasper is just too dazzling. with such a strong radiance that it's inevitable for me to feel overshadowed. For this reason, I like him, but I dare not love him. My relationship with him was also very plain. I had never been in a relationship before. Although I had watched some mindless sweet dramas. Everyone has a different personality foundation. Even though I really wanted Jasper to hug and kiss me and lift me up, I just couldn't bring myself to do it. Jasper is a person who is sometimes cold and sometimes warm. Sometimes he is very nice to me. And sometimes he is very indifferent to me. So it's inevitable that I would doubt myself and struggle internally. Until one day, a delicate and beautiful woman suddenly appeared in front of me. Her eyebrows and eyes gave me a strange sense of familiarity. I stared at her for a long time and finally realized. Oh, I do bear a bit of resemblance to her. She walked up to me confidently, extended her hand, and introduced herself. You're Ivy, right? Hello. My name is Melody. I'm Jasper's girlfriend. I blinked. She is Jasper's girlfriend. Then who am I? The mistress? Melody invited me to have coffee. In the coffee shop, she sat opposite me. After sizing me up carefully, she finally opened her mouth with satisfaction, as expected of the substitute I chose. This feeling of being somewhat similar, but not exactly the same, is simply perfect. I must have had a very stunned expression at that time because Melody laughed out loud. You still don't know, do you? The reason why Jasper is in a relationship with you is because I asked him to. She said that she was under a lot of pressure from her studies abroad. Due to the long-distance relationship, there were also many problems in her relationship with Jasper. The double pressure of studies and love really made it impossible for her to manage everything. The time she came back to China to accompany Jasper on campus, she happened to see me walking out of the school gate and immediately thought I was a good candidate. I widened my eyes and asked her, "Do you rich people all know how to play like this? Finding a substitute for yourself? Don't you think this is great? Although Jasper is with you, as long as he sees your face that resembles mine, he will keep thinking of me. And with you taking care of Jasper's needs, I also have more time and energy to focus on my studies. Aren't you bothered that your boyfriend has an intimate relationship with another woman? Both men and women have physical needs. I don't think physical loyalty is important. After all, I will also find someone else." I was stunned. It seems that people in the city really know how to play. Is their moral bottom line so low? Then haven't you ever thought that what if Jasper really falls in love with someone else? Melody looked at me with a half smile and didn't say anything. But I understood everything. Well, I overestimated myself. What kind of status do I have to compare with her? I scratched my head and asked. Then what's the purpose of you coming to see me today? Do you want me to break up with Jasper? Of course not. On the contrary. I hope you can try a little harder to make Jasper pay more attention to you. You don't know how annoying it is that he has been calling me every day recently to quarrel with me, saying that I'm ignoring him. I could only remain silent. After all, Jasper has always been at ease in front of me. So I can't imagine what Jasper looks like when he's being unreasonable. What about you? She asked me. Now that you know the truth, will you break up with Jasper? Before I could answer, she said confidently, I don't think so. As far as I know, you really need the money. Jasper, aside from other things, is indeed very generous. I nodded in agreement and answered with a heavy heart. He is really rich and really generous. So I really can't bear to leave him. Unlike the calmness I showed when facing Melody, that night, I really cried the whole night while hiding under the covers. Actually, I have a pretty high level of emotional insensitivity. And I don't think I'm that sad. But I just couldn't stop my tears. As I was crying, I went over all the details of the past in my mind. Those doubts that I couldn't figure out before were finally cleared up. I had only met Jasper a few times. But he remembered me because I somewhat resembled Melody. He is a cold person by nature. But he took the initiative to greet me because Melody asked him to find me as a substitute. The reason why he confessed to me on New Year's Eve was that Melody stood him up that day. The beautiful night view restaurant wasn't prepared for me. Nor were the flowers and music. And neither was the confession. Melody said that Jasper is very generous. Yes. Jasper is indeed very generous. But I was really ridiculous at that time. I didn't want to covet his money at all. Sometimes, the pride of the cour is even more ridiculous than the skits on the Spring Festival Gala. I opened my eyes in the dark, and the thought of breaking up with Jasper flashed through my mind countless times. I lied to Melody. I don't want to continue with Jasper anymore. I want to leave. However, a sudden breakup is too painful. I clearly feel that I haven't given much of my true feelings. But just thinking of the word breakup makes me feel extremely painful. So the next day, I made up my mind not to break up. I can finally let my feelings go completely. I can be nice to Jasper. I can love him. And I don't have to worry about losing him anymore. He has never belonged to me. Since I've never had him, why should I be afraid of losing him? I looked at my eyes in the mirror, which were so swollen that there was only a slit left, and I smiled. Finally, having fulfilled my I can also be a gold digger once. In the past few years of being a substitute, I believe I have been diligent and conscientious. Jasper is not bad to me. Maybe because he doesn't care. He always has a calm expression and seems at ease in front of me. It's probably that he can always think of Melody when he looks at me. So his eyes when he looks at me are oft and very complicated. But I don't really understand the way of thinking of these rich people either. Melody just went abroad. Not to a funeral. Jasper's family has everything. Sports cars, cruise ships, having fulfilled sigh, and airplanes. The distance across the Atlantic Ocean is nothing at all. I think if I really liked someone, even if they went to Mars, I would work hard to save money to find them. But why doesn't Jasper go to find Melody? No matter how much a substitute resembles the real one, they are still just a substitute. However, all of this has nothing to do with me. My life motto is that if you can't figure something out, don't think about it. And if you can't love someone, don't love them. It was already very late when I got home. I had turned my phone to silent mode. When I woke up at dawn, I saw that there were missed calls and unread messages on my phone. The unread message was from Jasper, saying that he had drunk too much and asking for the recipe of the hangover medicine I used to cook. And missed calls were from Jasper's friends, with several different phone numbers. I don't have any recipe for hangover medicine. When I was with Jasper before, I was always the one drinking. Mainly, I have a high tolerance for alcohol and don't get drunk easily. Even if I do get drunk, I'm very worry-free. I can walk on my own and wash myself, and I won't trouble others to take care of me. The only time Jasper got drunk was also the only time, as I remember, that he talked to Melody on the phone in front of me. It seemed that the conversation wasn't very pleasant. After hanging up the phone, he started drinking his sorrows away. When he was drunk, he rested his head on my shoulder without saying a word. Even when we got home, he refused to let go. He hung on me like a koala and followed me from the kitchen to the bathroom. I made him a cup of honey water. After he drank it, he lay in the bathtub and just stared at me with his eyes open. He was looking at me. Or perhaps, through me, he was looking at Melody. I lowered my head, took off his wet clothes, and like a hardworking and uncomplaining housekeeper, I helped him wash up. Ivy. I paused for a moment and then continued to wipe his face. Jasper pulled my arm down in dissatisfaction. His fingertips, with water droplets on them, rubbed across my cheek, wiping off my foundation and eyeshadow. You are Ivy. Yes, having fulfilled my sigh. I am Ivy. Only then did he close his eyes contentedly and mumble something. I didn't hear it clearly, but it didn't really matter. Jasper and I also had some tender moments. I believe that during the time I spent with Jasper, there were always a few times when Jasper saw me, Ivy, and not Melody. I was very good to him. Because I didn't know when he would leave, I indulged my feelings. People are like this. When they get used to others giving them everything they want, when that kindness disappears one day, they will always feel a bit uncomfortable. Even someone as outstanding as Jasper. And even though there are countless women throwing themselves at him, the kindness I showed him was still unique. After all, I know very well how to be good to someone else in detail. Just thinking that Jasper and Melody might have an argument because of my past existence makes me feel a little secretly pleased. The rich people played with my feelings wantonly, treating me like a plaything, calling me whenever they wanted and dismissing me at will. This can be considered my little revenge. Thinking of this, I couldn't help but sigh again. Sigh. I'm really a coward. If I really had the courage, I should take a knife and fight them. First, stab Jasper, and then slash at Melody. But life is so good. When you're alive, you can eat delicious food, see the hazy misty rain, and the passionate sun. I don't want to waste my feelings on hatred. They played with me, but my feelings weren't really that valuable either. The rewards Jasper gave me in the past few years were already generous enough. So I unilaterally think that we're even. As it turns out, being even was just my one-sided fantasy. When I learned that Jasper had become the new client of our company, and I was personally named by my superior to be in direct contact with Jasper's company, I knew that this matter wasn't over. Ah, those evil rich people. For the 1,001st time, I question God. There are so many rich people. Why can't there be one more like me? In the large conference room, I stood in front of the projector and presented our ideas and budget to Jasper, who was sitting in the main seat. Jasper stared at me expressionlessly, playing with a black Mont Blanc pen in his hand. That was a birthday gift I gave him 1 year. After I finished presenting the PPT, I looked at him and waited for his questions. I was already prepared to be made things difficult for by him. But unexpectedly, Jasper turned his hand and asked several of his subordinates, "I think this report is very detailed. I have no more questions. What about you?" Since the big boss had no objections, the subordinates naturally didn't dare to have any either. So this cooperation was easily secured by me. After signing the contract, I could almost hear the sound of money falling into my pocket. That was my generous share of the profits. Jasper took the initiative to suggest having a casual meal together, setting aside our personal feelings. He was indeed the most straightforward client I had ever met. So at the dinner, as the representative of the other party, I flattered Jasper a lot. Jasper calmly accepted all my praises and attentions and drank all the toasts offered to him. In the end, as expected, he got drunk. Jasper has an assistant and a driver. Logically speaking, it shouldn't be my turn, his former substitute, to take care of him. But just as the dinner was ending, in full view of everyone, Jasper took the initiative to reach out to me and call me by my pet name, Ivy. "Give me a hand. I'm feeling a bit dizzy." Suddenly, the gazes of more than a dozen men and women present all focused on me. Some were surprised, and some seemed to understand. Seeing that I didn't respond, Jasper frowned, propped himself up and barely stood up, then walked to my side and leaned affectionately on my shoulder. His fingertips groped around and touched my palm. He opened his hand and interlocked his fingers with mine. I could already guess how outrageous the rumors in the company would be after tonight. But in front of so many outsiders, my reason didn't allow me to make Jasper lose face. So I could only put on a poker face, support Jasper's body, and half drag him outside. The driver was a familiar face. He wasn't surprised to see me at all and took the initiative to nod, "Greet me, Ivy." Then he opened the car door. I sent Jasper into the car and wanted to leave, but he refused to let go. I could only take a deep breath and get into the car as well. I didn't look at those colleagues at all during the whole process. Let the tempest come tomorrow. Tonight, I just want to get rid of Jasper's entanglement as soon as possible. 77. The car drove onto the inner ring expressway, and the partition between the front and back rows slowly rose. Based on my understanding of Jasper's alcohol tolerance, he did drink a bit more tonight, but not to the point of being completely drunk. At most, he was slightly tipsy. So when Jasper sat up straight and started to look at me in silence, I wasn't surprised at all. "When are you planning to come back?" "Back where?" "To me." I let out an "oh," and kindly reminded Jasper, who seemed to have amnesia, "I should have told you that I'm not coming back." Jasper asked me, "When did you find out about Melody's existence?" "It's been a long time. Not long after I was with you. She came to find me." "Do you think you are her substitute?" This time, it was finally my turn to ask back, "Don't you think I am?" Jasper didn't answer me, So all your feelings for me these past few years were all false? Well, it's not that extreme. I'm not a professional actor. How could I act so convincingly? I shrugged. You should know best how much I liked you. Right? Only those who are loved can be fearless. Jasper was certain that I loved him deeply and wouldn't leave him. So he never cared about my feelings. This was probably the only chance for me to analyze my feelings for him so calmly in front of Jasper. Jasper. I really liked you before. To be more precise. It wasn't just liking. I loved you. Although you were really a bit annoying. I also really hated you at times. But even when I hated you the most, it didn't stop me from feeling happy whenever I saw you. So when I tried my best to be more like Melody in front of you, I was really sad inside. But all of that is in the past. I know that you're used to my kindness to you. But I can tell you responsibly that even I now can't be as good to you as I used to be. You know. Love is something intangible and elusive. But the difference between having love and not having love is actually quite obvious. I can no longer feel the joy and excitement I felt when I saved up money for half a year to give Jasper a pen. Naturally, having to sell and sigh. I can no longer feel the loneliness and sadness when I was ignored by Jasper. The good and the bad have nothing to do with me anymore. But Jasper just raised his hand and gently stroked my chin with his fingertips. He said, Ivy. You have to love me. Love me like you used to. No, love me more than you used to. What you've given me, you can't take back. Between you and me, Melody was never the problem. When you loved me the most, you never gave up the idea of leaving me. That's the real problem. These past few months were the cooling off period I gave you, with the purpose of making you understand that you don't have the right to leave me. But unfortunately, it seems that you still don't understand. So, I'm going to take back the freedom I gave you. I have a meeting that I must attend tomorrow morning. But I will go home for lunch. I hope that when I get home, I can see all your things in their original places. Including that table lamp and your cat head chopsticks. Jasper sent me home. The funny thing is that after being with him for so many years, he has only sent me home a few times. I was the one who drank, the one who took care of him, and the one who sent him home. I think even the most dedicated employee and the most obsequious person combined can't compare to 1/10 of how I treated Jasper. In the dark, I leaned against the bed and opened my phone to search for news about Ms. First Love. Although I haven't had any contact with Melody all these years, my connection with Jasper on moments was so close that I could always learn about Melody's whereabouts from various channels. Following the internet trail, I found Melody's online account and scrolled through her posts, according to the timeline. The posts she made when she first returned to the country were still full of joy. She even posted a photo of her and Jasper. Although there were patterns pasted on both of their heads, I was so familiar with Jasper that I could recognize him at a glance. The caption was, "You're still waiting for me where you are." I rolled my eyes and thought, of course he's still waiting for you. I've been his substitute for 3 years. But not long after, Melody started posting some ambiguous words. And it seemed that she wasn't in a good mood. Until the most recent post, Melody only wrote 2 words. Asshole. Someone in the comment section replied to her, You went looking for a substitute. How does it feel to be replaced by a counterfeit? I was a bit panicked and couldn't help but start biting my fingernails. Damn it. I was too good to Jasper. And now he's so used to it that he won't let go. And he doesn't even want his first love that he's been longing for so many years. If I had known it would be like this, I would have been more restrained. My phone dinged. It was a friend request from Jasper. With a message attached, "You should go to bed. I will send someone to pack your luggage for you tomorrow." I was startled and instinctively looked around, fearing that Jasper had installed surveillance cameras in my house. No, I can't just sit here and wait for trouble. That's not my style. Jasper seems cold and indifferent. As if he doesn't care about anything. But I've always thought that he's actually a bit moody and hot-tempered. So I packed my luggage overnight and planned to run away. However, just as I was halfway through packing, I suddenly received a call from the director of the orphanage. She asked me cautiously if I had quarreled with Jasper. Me? Before? Jasper used to allocate funds to our orphanage regularly every month for assistance. Just now, I received a notice saying that starting from next month, there will be no more funding. The director said in an embarrassed tone, so I'm calling to ask you. I don't mean to morally blackmail you. Don't get me wrong. His donation is his own will, and it's his freedom to give or not. It's just that the orphanage just ordered a batch of winter clothes yesterday, and we need to pay the final payment in a few days. If Jasper really stops giving money, I have to hurry up and raise the final payment. After a pause, the director added, just now, from what I heard on the phone, it seems that you made Jasper unhappy? I held the phone and remained silent for a long time. Jasper donates money to the orphanage every month? Why didn't you tell me about it before? I thought you knew. I didn't know. Jasper isn't anyone special to me. And he doesn't have to report everything he does to me. When I was with Jasper before, his secretary would regularly send me Jasper's latest schedule every week. Basically, it was implicitly assumed that except for his working hours, I had to accompany Jasper during all his free time. Donating to the orphanage was just a matter of his phone call, and naturally, I wouldn't know about it. Am I touched? To be honest, a little, but not much. Anyway, having fulfilled my obsession, he's not short of that money. And I don't need to speculate about Jasper's psychological state when doing this based on my own situation. But I think the orphanage is kind of morally blackmailing me. Now, with the good national policies, the Welfare Institute will receive regular funding. Moreover, after the children in our batch grow up, they transfer some money to the orphanage every month, more or less. It's true that the economy isn't particularly abundant, but we can definitely afford food and clothing. We won't be unable to survive without Jasper's money. I can contribute to the Welfare Institute within my ability, but I don't have to sacrifice my whole life's happiness for it. However, when I think about how difficult it was to get through the winters when I was a child, I feel a bit reluctant. It's not that I have an excessive amount of sympathy, but I just feel that pain too vividly. I asked her, how much money are you still short of? The director reported a figure. I'll transfer it to you later, I said. As for Jasper, his donation has nothing to do with me. I won't ask whether he will donate in the future or not. After hanging up the phone, I looked at the half-packed luggage and took a deep breath. Forget it. I won't take these things. The most important thing is to run away first. While grabbing my documents, I opened the ticket booking app. It doesn't matter where I go, as long as I can leave first. The door opened, and I looked up. There were several burly men in black standing outside the door, almost 2 meters tall. They heard the noise and turned around. My heart, which had been in my throat, instantly dropped back down. They were all Jasper's bodyguards. Familiar faces that I had seen many times. Ivy. The leading bodyguard nodded slightly at me. Sir has ordered that if you go out in the middle of the night, we should send you directly to him. I twitched the corners of my mouth, forcing a smile. Jasper actually sent 6 people to keep an eye on me. He really thinks highly of me. At 3 o'clock in the morning, I was sent to the gate of Jasper's villa. It had been a few months since I last came here, and it really felt like a lifetime ago. Jasper was sitting in the living room wearing a bathrobe, and it was obvious that he had been waiting for me for a while. It was just me and him in the living room. Jasper put down his phone and looked up at me. His eyes didn't show any obvious aggression, but I instinctively took a step back. It was just this step that made Jasper's expression change. He stood up and walked towards me slowly, step by step, and I had nowhere to retreat. I'm too familiar with this expression of his. Most of the time, Jasper's emotions are very calm. Only when he wants to sleep with me does he show strong emotions. He can be really fierce. Fortunately, I've endured a lot of hardship since I was a child, and I'm tough enough to withstand it. So sometimes I can't help but sigh that Melody really has a sharp eye for choosing a substitute. She just happened to find someone as suitable as me. But now, I don't want to. I don't want to. Both physically and mentally. A dead fire can't be reignited. But old feelings can resurface. For people who have been deeply entangled, even if they've let go, they will always be special. I don't want to challenge human nature, nor do I want to make the same mistakes again. I can't guarantee that no matter how much I get entangled with him again, I won't fall in love with him again. Since that's the case, the safest way is to stay away. But obviously, for Jasper, it's only about whether he wants it or not. Not about whether I can give it or not. Struggling, pushing away, evading, pressuring, being dominant, attacking. My clothes were torn to pieces. And I was pushed down on the dining table. In front of me was the heat. And behind me was the cold. Don't. My voice was as weak as the air. And it would disperse with a gust of wind. Jasper had a serious expression. His eyes were pitch black. And he held my ankle. The dazzling light was above my head. I tried hard to open my eyes wide. But my vision became more and more blurred. So I whispered again, I don't want to. Jasper probably couldn't hear me. But his action stopped. I couldn't see his expression clearly. I blinked. And something wet slid past the corner of my eye. I finally realized that I was crying. It's really rare. I'm not someone with a high threshold for tears. But I've never cried in front of others. Jasper released me in silence. And I slowly curled up, trying to hide myself. But of course, there was nowhere for me to hide. And the little bit of fabric left on my body wasn't enough to cover me. I wiped away my tears and didn't make a single sob from start to finish. After a while, when I adjusted my mood, I was finally able to smile at Jasper again. Well, if you're not in the mood anymore, can you let me go find some clothes to wear? Although the floor heating is on at home, it's really not very secure without clothes on. I've been very good at adjusting my emotions since I was a child. Thanks to my good attitude. Otherwise, I would have been depressed long ago. But Jasper looked at me with that complicated look again. So, did he think of Melody again? I instinctively wanted to raise my hand to cover my eyebrows and eyes that resembled Melody's. But I couldn't. I only have one pair of hands. If I cover one place, I can't cover the other. So I could only huddle up more tightly in a sorry state and then bury my head in my knees. It's okay, Ivy. Except for life and death, everything else is a small matter. You can adjust your emotions soon. I repeated this several times in my heart. Before I could adjust my emotions well, the surroundings suddenly darkened. It was Jasper who turned off the lights. Then the bathrobe that still carried his body temperature covered me. He picked me up and walked towards the second floor. Ivy, isn't it good to stay by my side? I was plunged into darkness. And the sense of security that I had lost gradually returned. And my consciousness also gradually cleared up. No. It's not good. Why? Because you're not good to me. Jasper stopped in his tracks. I couldn't figure out his mood. So I added feebly, I don't mean to blame you. You don't have the obligation to be good to me either. Where do you think I'm not good to you? When he asked me this, I was suddenly stunned and couldn't answer. He doesn't seem to have been bad to me in any way. It's just that I'd given too much to him. I thought I was doing it without hesitation and without any complaints. But in fact, there is still a little bit of dissatisfaction. He just didn't treat me very well. So I think if it's not very good, then it's not good. That night, Jasper held me and sat by the window for a long time. It was so long that in this city that hadn't snowed for more than 10 years, snowflakes as small as salt grains actually began to fall. But they were all too tiny. They melted before they could even be clearly seen. Ivy, do you want me to love you? I rested my head on Jasper's chest. Smiled. And didn't answer. If you can't treat me like you used to, I will show you my love. If you really can't do it. Jasper was silent for a long time before continuing. It doesn't matter. A little less is also okay. He was like someone buying clothes in an underground mall. Because he wanted it so much. He took the initiative to lower his bottom line before the boss could even speak. I yawned and avoided the topic. I'm a bit sleepy. How about we go to bed? Let's discuss anything else tomorrow. I had a dream. I dreamed that when I was a child, I was sent to the Welfare Institute. In the cold winter, I was only wearing a thin single layer of clothes. And my ears and hands were covered with frostbite. I dreamed of the shabby bed in the Welfare Institute and the doorman who always stared at me with a terrifying look in the dark. Later, I used a stone to knock out the last two teeth in his mouth. I dreamed that someone came to the Welfare Institute to do charity. His sticky hands groped all over my body, and I could only forcefully smile while enduring the discomfort. When no one was looking, I punctured his tire. I dreamed of Jasper again. On the day we first met, the sun was shining just right. He passed by the corridor, and I happened to look up from my book. We had an accidental look at each other that lasted less than a second. He continued walking forward, and I continued writing. Dreams are always chaotic and disorderly. The final image was Jasper's voice coming from the darkness. He said that Ivy was just Ivy, not anyone's substitute. When I opened my eyes, it was already dawn. I raised my hand uncomfortably to block the overly bright light. Sure enough, dreams are the opposite of reality. I don't have the courage to change the current situation. I'm cowardly and inferior at the core. So I can only smile, and I can only be tough. Because this way, I can pretend not to care and not to be sad. I've been locked up by Jasper. It's really strange. After watching TV dramas for more than 10 years, I finally got to experience firsthand what forced love by a domineering CEO means. Actually, I adapted quite well. I have money to spend without having to go to work, and someone arranges whatever I want to eat. I'm living a fulfilling life. I haven't given anything more to Jasper, and he seems to be adapting well too. Not forcing anything. After being locked up by Jasper for 1 month and 3 days, I met Miss First Love again. Melody was as delicate and beautiful as I remembered, and her gaze towards me was still haughty and overbearing. But this time, it was me who spoke first. Miss First Love, can't you make some efforts to make Jasper change his mind and fall back in love with you? Melody's face immediately changed. When you asked me to be a substitute, you didn't make it clear that once I became a substitute, I couldn't turn back. Melody gritted her teeth and said, Ivy, are you humiliating me? Is this considered humiliation? I was a bit in a dilemma. Is it not okay to tell the truth? Enough. Don't think that just because you've used some tricks to win Jasper's heart, you can stay by his side for a lifetime. Melody suddenly stood up. Sooner or later, he will get tired of you. A lifetime is too long. I don't expect that. But there's one thing I really want to ask. I looked into her eyes. You once told me that this substitute, was personally chosen by you. And it was you who asked Jasper to find me as a substitute. Are you sure that you suggested he find me as a substitute because you didn't want to deal with Jasper and thought he was annoying? Melody replied firmly, of course. I looked at her and didn't say anything. She tried to hold my gaze. But unfortunately, not long after, she guiltily avoided it. That's a matter between me and Jasper. I don't have to explain it to you. Do I? I nodded, and I understand. So you lied to me. I don't know if Jasper really regarded me as a substitute. But Melody approaching me was definitely not out of willingness. She didn't stay in the villa for too long because Jasper came back. Melody wanted to talk to Jasper, but Jasper didn't even look at her. He just casually told the butler to see the guest out. He walked towards me, loosened his tie, and buttoned his cuff, and then held me in his arms. Taking a deep breath, it was like sniffing a cat. I smiled and asked him, Jasper, how long do you actually plan to lock me up? Until you give up the idea of leaving me? For a whole lifetime? That's too long. Isn't it? It can't be. Jasper didn't say anything. I actually don't understand him either. If all he wants is my kindness to him, then he should know very well that I can no longer give it. If all he wants is me as a person, then why does he have to be good to me? The reason might be that human nature is selfish, wanting both this and that. Just like me. I say I only want Jasper's money. But actually, I also want his love. But people are contradictory. Because when he gives it to me, I push it away, always thinking it's fake. 17 Jasper didn't actually lock me up for a lifetime. It's not that he compromised. It's that I compromised. Life is really a pain in the neck. If you can't resist it, you can only accept it. He's still neither overly enthusiastic nor cold towards me. But I gradually start to pick up my old habits and recall the days when I was good to him. So Jasper gradually gives me some freedom and takes me to some occasions. Although he still won't let me out of his sight. At least I can get in touch with the outside world. I'm a bird. I have wings. But I can't fly. But I chirped and carefree. Happiness is a luxury. But it doesn't matter. Being happy is enough. On Jasper's 30th birthday, I asked him what gift he wanted. Can you give me whatever I want? Within my ability. Sure. Anyway, having fulfilled my adsi. This is all the ability I have. If he makes an excessive request, I'll just say it's beyond my ability and I can't do it. But Jasper took out a velvet box from his pocket and handed it to me. Then he held his hand in front of me. I'll give you a chance to propose to me. I opened the box in a daze. And a pair of rings lay quietly inside. I suspected I had misheard. Jasper said he'd give me a chance to propose to him? Are you kidding me? Are you sure our genders aren't reversed? But when I looked at Jasper, he was serious. And it was obvious there was no mistake. Seeing that I didn't move for a long time, Jasper frowned and glared at me impatiently. Don't be in a hurry. I took out the ring and instinctively wanted to put it on his middle finger. But Jasper curled up all his fingers, leaving only his ring finger. I tilted my head and looked. He only left me one answer. So there's no need to judge if it's right or wrong. I put the ring on him. Doing the same, he also put a ring on my ring finger. Do you feel it now? What? I love you. I looked up at him in confusion and then shook my head. I don't feel it. But it doesn't matter. If there's really love, I'll surely be able to feel it until the day I die. If love disappears one day, there's no difference between feeling it and not feeling it. Jasper. Was I a substitute? No, Avoshari. You're Ivy. Just Ivy. I nodded and closed my eyes contentedly. From this night on, I finally stopped having nightmares. Epilogue. Jasper has been difficult to get along with since he was a child. His personality is unpredictable. Moody. No one can tell which word will make him unhappy and cause him to fly into a rage. The doctor said it's not a bad temper, but an illness that needs to be treated. But after trying many treatment methods, there's no improvement. So Jasper has been taking small doses of sedatives for a long time to soothe his emotions. Until he met Ivy. Actually, he didn't think Ivy looked like Melody at all. He just simply felt that this girl had an aura. Like the cool mountain stream in summer. Magically, it quenched the fire that had been burning in his heart for years. At first, he didn't notice it until Melody came to the school to see him. They were childhood friends. Melody had been following him around since they were kids. But most of the time, Jasper lived in his own world, and it was hard for him to spare any attention for others. Hey, that girl looks a bit like me. Don't tell me you're treating her as my substitute? Jasper retracted his gaze for Ivy and looked at Melody. Frowning. Did she look like Melody? No, she didn't. Do you want to get to know her and let her be my substitute and stay with you? Melody's joking words accidentally revealed the truth. And Jasper suddenly realized that men and women could actually have a very intimate relationship. So he took the initiative. And he got what he wanted as he wished. As long as Ivy stayed by his side, his emotions would magically calm down. And he would be lazy. Like a lion that just wants to bask in the sun after eating and drinking enough. Ivy always seemed to be full of energy. Jasper didn't like to talk much. But he liked to observe her and indulged her. But sometimes Ivy's smile wasn't very sincere. As if she was wearing a strange mask. Trying to hide herself. So Jasper liked to wipe off the foundation on Ivy's face and call her name. Ivy. You're Ivy. He liked to cling to her. Stick to her. And liked to be looked at by her and taken care of wholeheartedly. Sometimes Jasper thought this wasn't good. Ivy seemed to have become an addiction he couldn't quit. But this thought always disappeared quickly because he didn't want to consider the possibility that Ivy would leave him at all. How could she possibly leave? But it turned out that she had always been thinking about leaving. It turned out that she really would leave. Jasper thought this was a very bad flaw and she had to change it. He wanted to teach her a lesson. But in the end, he started to not be able to tell who this lesson was actually for. Without Ivy, he was very irritable and his emotions were out of control. Just like a drug addict forced into withdrawal. Because he had tasted the taste of peace, he missed it even more. So the withdrawal failed. He was greedy for her kind, but he found that it didn't matter if she wasn't good to him, as long as she was by his side. He actually didn't know if he loved her or not. But if this was what she wanted, he could learn. It's just love. Of course. He could afford to give it. As long as she didn't leave.